Let's get to Kaduna, where we had a bit of disturbing pictures earlier coming from there, as we bring in a reporter, Lupe Asom, to give us update. Lupe, we saw some pictures, coming in from Kaduna earlier, on the protest. Give us updates, from there.
Well, good afternoon, Precious. The state capital was quiet until 9:30 a.m. when some of the protesters started gathering at Ahmadu Bello Way, the very famous NEPA roundabout. And in a very short while, they now marched the government house. We were out there when things were quite calm. The process was quite peaceful. They started converging in droves. It became a beehive of activities. And suddenly, the security operatives in that area were almost getting overwhelmed because the protesters were chanting and trying to gain access into the government house. So they barricaded the gate, the road that leads into the government house. And in a very short period, the process was almost getting violent. We saw security agencies trying to speak to them, trying to appeal, but all those efforts didn't yield results. So at some point, security operatives were left with no option but to use mild force to maybe just push them away. But we saw the protesters make attempts to repel the security forces. In the process, a security personnel was injured. He sustained very serious injuries. He has been taken to the 44 Nigerian Army Reference Hospital. And we also saw the protesters march to Kadipa. That's one of the government buildings. They broke into the building, looting, picking up things. Of course, the police had issued a warning that processes like this may be hijacked. And that was what happened. We have the Kaduna State Transport Authority, that's the Kasuda. Their office was also broken into, their chairs were stolen. If you go there now, you can see the windows are shattered and all of that. But one thing that stood out was that the police alleged that the protest was hijacked by members of the Islamic Movement of Nigeria, of which they also presented some evidences that made it clear that the protests were hijacked. So, according to the police, they said these people were not actually protesting for maybe an improvement in their living conditions. They were people with ulterior motives, sinister motives, who made attempts to take advantage of a process that began very peacefully. And so that was when the police were left with no alternative for them to use mild force to push them away. Some of the 25 protesters were arrested. Some of them were seen putting on police camouflage. One was arrested with a jackknife. One was arrested with live ammunition. I forwarded all those visuals to the office. So these are some of the weapons that were recovered from these people who came out to protest. But in other parts of the state, we noticed that it was calm, although businesses, several shop owners and business owners didn't come out because of fear of what might happen. And just as it happened, the protest, which started peacefully, escalated into something that was almost getting out of control. The protesters were making efforts to break into the government house, which wouldn't have gone well. So the police, we congratulate we need to commend the police for the efforts they made to salvage the situation and ensure that these protesters don't break into the government house. But we didn't see any protesters. No protester was shot. No protester was injured.
All right.
But we noticed that some of the protesters made attempts to break into government offices and agencies.
Thank you so much, Lupe, for that update, correspondent in Kaduna State. Lupe has some live for us there.